This is the CreaseCast.
Well, folks, after 69 total shots in the game, going 6 out of 9 goals, the Canucks picked up their 69th all-time win over the Leafs on 4/20/2021. Nice.
Very nice.
Ladies and gentlemen, nice. Welcome to what feels like the first CreaseCast in forever. Obviously, I've been away.
Maybe.
I've been away, obviously, toiling away. If you follow me on Twitter, you know the results of what toiling away did to me and my body. I spent several nights in a row in the past week staying up till 12:30 or later and then waking up at 5:30 or earlier to go to work for 8 hours. All in the name of tracking AHL hockey games. And it resulted in one of the worst hangovers I think I've had in my entire life. If you're watching the YouTube stream, the hair is not because of the hangover. The hair is just because I'm celebrating 420 with getting high, if you know what I mean. So the hair is up, the hair is vertical. We're here to talk like an insane 2-game win streak. Not because of, just like the fact that they're like huge wins. They're huge, but it's just like they're insane in the sense that the Leafs basically were handed 2 victories on a silver platter and they lost in the most embarrassing fashion 2 times in a row. And yeah. I think for me, who's obviously been a little rusty with the game recaps because we haven't had an episode where we've actually recapped a game in quite some time. And so it's going to take the 2 of us, but I'm very happy that we get to cover some embarrassing Leafs losses in our return to play. So
I thought we were going to take the high road here and be like, we gave it our all. We gave it our all. You know what? Because especially just considering, especially like Sunday, where just Toronto Twitter was having themselves a day. They were having themselves a real hard day. Never forget the real victims of the Canucks COVID return was Leafs Twitter. That was the real hard done by people here.
Yes, we can get into. I guess we'll get straight into Game 1 here because Game 1, I mean, expectations were probably bottom of the barrel for everyone in Canuckland. If anyone had expectations or were intending on being legitimately critical of players or how they looked, like you're out to lunch. No one was expecting anything. They had their 2-0 lead. It seemed like it was pretty much over, and it was just, the way the shots were going against the Canucks, it just felt like you were watching someone pistol whip a blind kid or something. And then Bo Horvat decides, I'm going to be the captain of this ship. Look at me. I am the captain now. He gets one early. And then later in the game, of all people, Jalen Chatfield, a guy who has not scored a professional goal of hockey or in hockey since 2018, gets a picture-perfect layup assist for Nils Höglander to tie the game at 2, forces overtime, Holtby with a gorgeous, brilliant windmill kick save. A highlight reel save that will probably be replayed in eternity from here on out. It was that good. And then who but else, the captain, Bo Horvat. Bosif Horvat. I also saw this on Twitter, Borat Horvat, which I don't know, that cracked me up pretty good. Seals it in overtime. Leafs 1 point out of a possible 2 against a team they had absolutely no right losing to. Lachlan, your initial thoughts and your infinity blocker choice for Game 1 of 2.
Okay, if we're doing this individually, I guess, frankly, what's nice about that first game is that when it comes to the Infinity Gauntlet, there's actually a fair chunk of people you could give it to. There's no shortage of names that you could give it to, which is, this season it's been kind of hard pressed for us to find those guys too.
Outside of goaltending, it's been hard to find someone else. But in that first game, you could make arguments for a lot of people. Yeah,
right. And especially outside of goaltending, That being said, I'm giving it to Braden Holtby because, of course, I'm giving it to Braden Holtby. I mean, I guess I could, in a way, you can almost give it to him for both games here, because this guy has obviously been through a lot this season. It's been tough on everybody, but he started off so rough here in Vancouver. It hasn't been a good year for him overall, and I think very rightfully, a lot of people, when it was announced ahead of the game on Sunday that he was starting and Demko wasn't ready to go, that a lot of people were were not so much panicking because, again, the Canucks weren't supposed to be in that game anyway. Right. But it was more
they
were
writing the conclusions of their game recaps, basically being like, "Oh, goaltending was the issue." Which
they were all ready to. Yeah, and it really did my heart good to see people just bonding over Braden Holtby all night. Like, everybody was on the Holtby's train all night, and because he was a little bit off in the early going, and then he settled in well and was making the essential saves and pretty much dragged that team to the win in OT. I mean, they got some key performances from Horvat and Höglander, and Tyler Myers as well. I'll throw into that mix as well. But without Holtby, they don't come close. And the fact is, he played the kind of game that you need from your 1B to have any chance at making the playoffs, which I guess is technically still in the potential, in the realm of possibility for this group, which is incredible. So who are you giving it to this for the first game?
So anyone who's listened to CreaseCast this season knows my stance on this player, and this will become as a surprise, but because I knew you would pick Braden Holtby, I felt it would be dumb to have a conversation where we're just copying each other. So I decided to give it to Tyler Myers, which is bold because everyone here knows that I think Tyler Myers has a lot of flaws in his game and is a very frustrating player to watch. He's very fun, very chaotic, but he's very frustrating to watch. But when Alex Edler left the game for his very bad knee, which we will get into, he stepped up massively for the team. I think he played 8 minutes alone shorthanded and finished the night like 30 minutes or more of time on ice, including on ice for the final overtime goal. Like,
he sure did.
He came up, obviously Horvat came up big for the actual points, same with Höglander. All the skaters really came up huge because the fact that they're playing at all is like nothing short of a miracle. Like, they were asked to do the unthinkable for the league and the league scheduling purposes, and they all came up in spades and had really solid games, even though obviously they looked fatigued and had like really rough shifts here and there. Everyone played admirably, and you can commend them through and through for their efforts. But for me, Tyler Myers really stepped up. And yeah, he had like his gaffes here and there, but dude, he was saying in his pregame interviews, he had nausea, he was puking, he had vertigo, he had brain fog, he had every symptom out of the book, and all he could do was laugh about it. And then not even like a day after listing off all these symptoms that he had just recently gotten because it hit him late, he's leading the team in time on ice next to, and then Travis Hamonic is next up, with 27 or 28 minutes or something like that. So it's just like this huge gap between him and Myers alone. So that's my pick. I guess we can get into the reason why my pick got his gauntlet, and that is because Alex Edler left that first game after a very, very ugly knee.
Yeah, let's get that out of the way before we get into the good
let's
stuff.
Let's the Band-Aid, because I do want to quickly touch base and say that I got ratioed by Leafs Twitter because they don't understand hyperbole.
Yeah.
And I was laughing so hard at all the people in my DMs being like, "You fucking idiot! Edler's the reason why Zach Hyman's knee is broken." It's like, okay, I know that. Obviously,
he's a murderer.
Yeah, obviously Edler is literally the physical person at fault for injuring Zach Hyman and did something unthinkably stupid in a moment of fatigue and exhaustion. But I can still blame the league for putting him on the ice to be in that situation where he does something unthinkably stupid. So I was fucking howling at the people in my DMs being like, kill yourself, go get mental help, you fucking idiot. Just
was that really in your holy cow?
I had to delete quite a bit. It was like, I have thick skin and I've been ratioed before and had, been canceled, all that crap. So I thought it was very funny when it's just a hockey take where people flip the fuck out over. And big fan of that. But we can get right into the Edler thing.
I was preparing to come in here and be like, you did make the rookie error of assuming people got nuance on the internet, which never works. People don't get it. No matter how you do it, they don't get it.
I made two cardinal mistakes, actually. You're correct. I made two, though. I made one, thinking people would understand nuance on the internet, and two, trusting Toronto Maple Leafs fans to have a brain on the internet. So that's...
trusting them to act rationally.
Yeah, two things at once.
Okay.
I mean, if the rules were inverse, like, I wouldn't be the type to go into someone's DMs and tell them to kill themselves or seek mental help for your bad take. But
no, I would hope not.
I know Canucks Twitter, and there's a certain faction of people that, like, if it was the reverse and Zach Hyman threw a knee on Nils Höglander, the Canucks Twitter would be already finding out what his address is in Toronto and sending hate mail to him. You know what I mean? Like, it's just the nature of the beast.
It doesn't make it better. Doesn't make it better though. Like, it doesn't. No. It's not something people should do.
But unfortunately, Zach Hyman's out for, I think they said 1 to 2 weeks, which honestly, lucky. I'm shocked it's that low because of how ugly that hit was on his knee. Right. Edler gets suspended 2 games, so one of them's already down against the Leafs, and I'm sure they're going to be looking at how not having Hyman in the lineup is the reason why they didn't win. I'm sure that's a topic of discussion, but
I mean, because you look at that play, that play. I mean, again, people are just like, I will say, I don't remember seeing any sort of like any fan base lose their minds the way the Leafs Twitter did over the Hyman thing, where they were all like, literally. So in my case, right? Like, I don't ever get any sort of like hate mail or anything like that. I'm not. I don't have the. I don't get the. I don't have the same number of followers or like traction that your stuff gets. So that definitely plays into it, but. Generally speaking, most of the stuff I put out there, I even like stuff where it's, like it's a take. People rarely come into my DMs people never come into my DMs. People rarely come into my replies and start like chewing me out.
Take or whatever.
Yeah. Right. I posted on Sunday I posted a clip of the clip of Kevin Bieksa talking about kneeing, and he did a fantastic job.
It was a great explanation,
like incredible explanation. And he, because he talks about like nobody takes a kneeing penalty or that sort of play on purpose, because the odds of you just injuring yourself just as badly or worse than the other guy is so high that it would never be worth it for you to try and make that play with intent. Yeah. What happened to Edler there is, I mean, it's pretty clear that they got caught out for 3 minutes on a 3-minute shift, and Edler trying to get back, Hyman gets around him, and it's that immediate instinct of, oh my god, player is getting around me, what can I do? I'm so tired, right? And and instinctively you throw out that leg because it's just the closest. It's just that instinctive.
Yeah, that gut instinct. Throw something in the way that stops him, right? And unfortunately,
and that was the knee
right into his kneecap.
Right, and that and Hyman went down, and it was a bad decision on Edler's part for 100%. But again, so many people were coming into my replies like posting some clip where he did the same thing to Eric Stahl in a world
9
championship.
years ago.
And that's a huge talking point with Toronto people today.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, I'm sorry, like, hey, and they're he's so dirty. Edler's so dirty. He's sneaky dirty, and I'm like, let's put it this way, if your entire case is hinged on a player being dirty, is hinged on a play from 8 years ago in a world championship that has nothing to do with the NHL, you don't have a case at all. Yeah. That's not anything.
History.
That's nothing.
Not NHL history, so that means nothing.
And some people are like, well, I've seen him be really dirty this year. He's taken a lot more penalties against the Leafs this year in the 6 games he played. And it's like, okay, first of all, you've seen him in 6 games. We've watched him in 800.
Yeah, we would know.
More. We would know better than you. Our sample size is much larger. And number 2, he is taking more penalties this year from what I can tell. But that's not because he's suddenly gotten dirtier, and that's across the board. It's because he's gotten a little older, a little bit slower, and he's not able to keep up the play as easily, so he's taking a lot more like trips and hooks and those sorts of plays. And in this particular case, it's a bit of a one-off because, this is a case where if this game is happening when the Canucks are healthy, like in completely normal circumstances, the Canucks aren't just coming off COVID. I highly doubt that Edler and Myers, regardless of what's going on, get caught out for a 3-minute long shift at any point. And Edler's not so tired that he makes that that poor call on Zach Hyman. And that's why when you say that the NHL has to take responsibility for that sort of thing, like, you're not wrong. You're totally not wrong in saying that. But of course, as we both agree, Edler has to take responsibility for it too, and that's why the 2-game suspension is totally fair for what he did. Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess we can move into another kind of knee injury-related thing, and that'll segue us into game number 2, because I think we'll talk more about the Leafs goaltending broadly when we get to the second game. But as I tweeted earlier tonight, I was watching WandaVision. I wanted to bang that show out of the way while I watched tonight's game because I honestly really thought okay, the Leafs are going to come back after getting embarrassed, and this is a national feed. There's no way they're going to get clowned again, right? And I was wrong. They got dummied, and the goaltending was atrocious. And on the way, I don't know if I saw him after he went down awkwardly on his knee at one point, but Antoine Roussel had a bit of a collision at one point, and then he kind of skated really gingerly to the bench. And I don't know if because I obviously had the game muted, but I don't know if they called out that he went down the tunnel or not.
So he got tangled up with Mitch Marner. Literally, Marner was skating backwards from the play. They didn't see each other, and basically, Roussel and Marner ran into Marner's backside, back right side, and they both kind of tumbled over each other. And it was his knee. I don't know exactly what hit where.
Right.
But yeah, he did not come back after that. He left the game. He did not come back. And then, in terms of injuries as well, Zach Bogosian caught a rut in the ice
that was
or
an
something,
ugly fall too.
And just smashed into the boards, and he also didn't come back.
Those are scary too, because the Bogosian one, especially when your opposing team stops playing, Bo Horvat was obviously chasing the puck into the end, sees Bogosian go down. He has the loose puck right in front of him, and he's not even trying to go for it. He's just looking at Bogosian because he's like, oh, fuck. This guy went down hard. And, I know I don't remember what game it was, but someone made a comment in, the intermission or something. I don't know how many games ago this was, that the ice conditions were shitty at Rogers Arena.
That was I remember Stastny was talking about that.
Right.
When I think that would have been the last game before the Canucks' initial week off that turned into the month of COVID situation.
Right. Stuff. And I think players have been complaining about the ice conditions for a long time, actually. I don't know what's going on there, but there was issues at the World Juniors that when they were out here, whenever the hell that was.
That would have been I think that was 20 years ago now. 2019. 2019, so about
Yeah.
about a couple
about
decades.
15, 20 years ago then.
Yeah, exactly. Somebody reminded me, and this was something I remember talking about with the last time the ice was complained about against the Jets, where somebody replied to when I mentioned the Bogosian hit, and somebody said that remember it was really hot out today because if you're not in Vancouver, if you don't live in Vancouver, it has been very, very hot the last couple weeks. Like it feels like summer already here.
It's unseasonably warm. Like usually it's like pouring rain, kind of like 8 to 14 degrees out, but it's been like 23
showers,
for like the last week and a half. So it is like obviously they need to make some kind of changes so that their ice surface is a bit better. But like that Bogosian one was bizarre because it's like his foot just kind of like caught a rut and then just like his left foot flew under him, and then all of a sudden he just went like flying into the boards. It was an ugly fall, and you hate to see it, especially for a team like Toronto who like is legitimately like their first. I think they're first in the division. They have decent playoff aspirations. Like they're trying to go on a deep run, and you lose Hyman to a shitty hit, and then you lose. Like not a good defender. Like Bogosian's been fine for them, but like he's a guy obviously you can't afford to just like lose for 2 weeks because the ice conditions were shit.
Right. Yeah, so, and I mean because it's big. Yeah, it's tough because depth is everything, and I mean they have people who can replace Bogosian, but it's still not good. And I mean, if anything, you worry about what happens for the rest of the games now because it's only going to get the ice isn't going to get any better from what I can imagine, right? And earlier in that game, and like we can talk about, and on the first goal the Leafs scored, a big reason why that puck, why Tavares was so wide open on that first goal is because right as they're skating into the blue line, Tyler Myers also caught a rut or something, or he lost it. He lost an edge, like right in front of right behind the blue line, and that gave Nylander a lot more room to kind of skate in with the puck. Right. And all four basically as soon as Myers goes down, like Schmidt skates in, he slides into like to try and keep from like the pass out into the slot. And then the other like Canucks forwards all collapse in towards Nylander, and that leads to Tavares open as he's coming in on that right side, and it's just a tap in for him at that point. And it was a good heads up play by Nylander as well, not to go for the wraparound. He sees the open lane. And that's the concern, because if your ice isn't quality, you can have situations not only like forget even where it's like it's a breakdown that leads to a goal because somebody loses like their balance. You can really injure your own players that way. And right now, especially considering the whole COVID thing, one of the big things that's the worry here with so many games that they're going to be playing down the stretch and coming off of a huge health scare is, can you keep people healthy? And which is going to be the hardest part about all of this, is how many players are even going to be able to, finish the year with you. So you have to put your team in every single situation in the best possible situation, and that includes stuff like making sure the ice is as good as possible, because that could lead to some unfortunate stuff that can make your road back to potentially a playoff spot even harder.
Yeah, especially for the Canucks, where it's like even without COVID, like they are completely relying on their top six to score goals right now. Like I think J-Pad or Patrick Johnson, I can't remember which one, tweeted out that the bottom six has like 1 point in the last like 9 games or something like that. Like it's like an ugly stat. So if you think about it, like if, instead of Bogosian catching that rut, it's like Nils Höglander, then there goes 4 points out of the last 2 games, or 3 points out of the last 2 games. Like that's a huge loss. And that's like something this team can't afford when like depth is obviously a huge issue. We can get into some of the players that made their debuts over the last 2 games, but like Nils Höglander is playing out of his fucking mind again in the last 2 years. The last 2 games. Yeah, feels like 2 years. But the last 2 games, he's been like unreal, just an absolute firecracker every shift. creating like scoring chances every time he touches the puck, like getting good goals. Like honestly, like I know Kirill Kaprizov is pretty much like a shoe-in for the Calder, but like, man, if Höglander keeps this pace where he's at, a point plus per game, for the rest of this season, like, man, he's got to be up there. Like,
he's got to be a finalist,
especially after like a COVID shutdown, like his age. The fact that he's basically like putting the top six on his back when they're not scoring, he's still getting it done. Like with players like Jalen Chatfield, like that's absolutely massive. That I'm like, it won't get recognized, but I mean, it should be recognized. But
hey, it might. People are, the Canadian media has a pretty hefty contingent in the awards every year. So they'll be the ones who have seen Höglander enough to make that call. I wouldn't be surprised. He won't win. He definitely wouldn't win. But I think it'd be stunning if he wasn't at least like top 5,
top 3, top 5, top 4.
He should be like. I think he should be a finalist. That might again because of the divisional setup this year. It might be harder to swing that because again, three quarters of the league haven't seen him play any games this year. So that might be a little bit more tough, but I think he absolutely deserves to be in the conversation whether he'd win or not. I think that's pretty clear. He's doing a really good job at creating just even like from plays that don't look like they're going to amount to much. Like he was the guy who put the stretch pass out for Horvat in the first game. Mm-hmm. He made that little bit of room. He makes the room. He pushes that defenseman out of the way for Chatfield credit. We'll talk about Chatfield in a bit, I'm sure here. But he left the room open so that Chatfield can find him right there in the slot, and there was not a whole lot Jack Campbell could do on that. Yeah. And then today comes up with like what the tying goal. I think he had a couple other points in there as well, if I'm not mistaken.
I think he only had the one. I think he had the one goal, but like every time he was on the ice, like it felt like he was ramping up for like goal number 2, right? So, but it's just like it underscores like his impact. You notice him every time. You always get the sense that like, okay, the Canucks are going to turn it around if this kid gets more ice time. And sure enough, like he ties the game tonight after they give up a shorthanded goal. Like that's after watching, I don't know how many millions of hockey games at both the NHL and AHL level, if you give up a shorthanded goal in the third period, no less, that's an absolute backbreaker for a team. Like it is hard to recover from that. He answered real quick. Like I think it was definitely less than 5 minutes after that shorthanded goal. Like he scores at even strength too. And suddenly, like the Canucks go from being like, okay, well, they tried their best. They got 2 points out of 4. Like that's a good enough win for them. And then all of a sudden, it's like, oh no, this game is theirs again. They've got them on the ropes. And seconds after, Tanner Pearson gets a goal. And he gets another one that's like the ugliest one imaginable. Like it is a good like comeback win, and it starts with Nils Höglander's effort. 14 minutes of ice time, like that's the other thing. Like he's doing this with like okay ice time, like middle 6 amount of ice time, and usually the majority of it is at 5v5. Like the kid is fucking unreal with what he does at 5v5, and
the quality of the shifts that he's getting are high, and that's something that the best teams need. You need to be able to, if you're not going to put out everybody even, you can't evenly distribute your offense, which obviously is not something the Canucks are capable of doing right now. You need to be able to put together a team that they are able to put something of substance together no matter how much ice time they're getting, whether that's scoring goals or doing something else. And with Höglander, he's getting less opportunities than he has arguably earned, I think, at this point. I think he could be getting out there a lot more than he should. Granted, again, coming off of COVID, maybe not right now. But in terms of if he were, in a normal situation, he's earned a lot more trust then I think he's getting at the current moment, and he's playing. He's playing to show it, and he's proving it with the way he's scoring and the way he's contributing offensively. And hell, even in his own end, he's done a pretty decent job for a guy just coming in fresh.
Well, speaking of in their own end, I guess we can talk about some of the other players that made their debuts in the past 2 games. And I guess we'll start with Jalen Chatfield, who, after getting basically benched by Austin Matthews and the Toronto Maple Leafs in his last Canucks game, he catches COVID, does his quarantine, comes back, starts a game, plays very well, gets a point with Nils Höglander, as we mentioned, plays again, this time with his most common partner in the AHL, that was Olli Juolevi, and they played good. They were mostly, not sheltered, but they were pretty much like catered matchups against like the third pair of Toronto and like the fourth line. So like they got pretty favorable matchups, but they weren't getting completely crushed. They did okay. They both got a look on the penalty kill, which is a area where I think they would probably be best fitted for this club. I think they'd probably earn a lot more value out of the two of them if they use them exclusively as penalty killers, like mainstay penalty killers, instead of, hammering Hamonic or Schmidt or Myers with extra shorthanded time. Like those two, like they have tons of experience at it at the AHL level. They were very good at it. So it would make sense that if Nolan Baumgartner trusts them enough, like maybe you could see those two in a bigger penalty killing role. But yeah, good game for him, especially Juolevi too. Like he was coming off of an even longer layoff than Chatfield. Like he hadn't seen game action in fucking forever, and I think that was mostly because of cap implications. Like they couldn't get him in the lineup because of Ben's cap hit, but when they traded him, suddenly it opened things up for Juolevi to slide into the lineup. I thought he looked okay tonight too. Like he had a one play the only play of the game that I clipped before I decided to start watching WandaVision was it was like a breakaway opportunity for Toronto, and he picked off like the lead-in pass, like easily picked it off, quickly turned, no look, puts it off the skate of his own player and redirects to another Canucks player, and they're breaking in the other direction into the Leaf zone. Like it was a smooth play. I don't know if he meant to bank it off of his teammate's skate, but if he did, like 4D chest level shit. So I'm gonna give him credit and assume he did.
If they ask, you say set play. That's the correct
set play,
answer.
baby. Don't you
if it works, you say set play every time. That's the correct answer.
But your thoughts on Juolevi or Chatfield? Anything else?
I mean, like a plus minus doesn't mean much, but the fact that they were 0, that they finish at an even, like on evens against, again, a Leafs team that has no shortage of offensive, like power, I think they did exceptionally well for what they were being asked to do for the situation, like the situation of.
They weren't coming in under good circumstances, and the fact that they didn't stand on their head, but they played perfectly fine is exactly what they needed.
What do we always say? They weren't negatives. They weren't a problem when they were on the ice. And that's what you need. Like they were quality when they were out there. And I'll even throw Mr. Guillaume Brisebois in there as well. He also had himself the one game, which
he looked okay.
He looked okay, but again, the situation
you can't really be critical of him either, right? Like, right. He's coming in off of an even shittier layoff. He played some AHL hockey with Laval, and then he comes in and he's asked to play third pairing minutes with Jalen Chatfield, like a pairing he had struggled with quite often in the AHL level. It's a big ask.
In with the COVID stuff and everything, I'll say this. Guillaume Brisebois could have come into the game the other on Sunday and turned the puck over on every single shift and then fallen over doing it. And even if he had, and this goes for every player on the ice, if he had, I would have been like, you're good. You're good. You know what? It's fine. You're doing great, champ. Like that's pretty much I think the whole mentality that I think everybody had for these, even today. Like, I mean, people were a little bit more, I wouldn't say critical, but more giving their opinions of the on ice performance a little bit more today than the first game. But the first game, it was like, you know what? As long as you do your best, we don't care. It does not matter.
Everyone was kind of like,
your best could be
skating
awful.
Is like impressive enough. Like,
if
you have bad plays, like whatever shit happens. The one play that I saw from Breezeball was like him getting walked around the outside and like led to a scoring chance. I was like, that's gonna happen. Like, you know, even if he wasn't coming out off of a COVID layoff, like, so whatever, shit happens. It wasn't the best, wasn't the worst either.
Right, and for all three of those guys, like all three of those defensemen, like I would give I give them props for being able to come into that situation as tough as it was, and be able to play and as much of not being like a negative when they're on the ice and not making more problems than they needed, right?
Yeah,
and because you just needed the stability for these last two games in your own end. You just needed to not be completely hemmed in at all times. And there were points where every defenseman more or less got caught out for a little bit too long, more or less. But they held in there. I mean, Tyler Myers with the Edler thing. I mean, you mentioned it at the top of the show. Like, he played 30 goddamn minutes in that game, and in that first game, and he played another 22 today, which is a little bit more in line with what he normally plays. But holy, 30 minutes, and again, we harp on Tyler Myers probably more than any other player in the Canucks roster, and it is partially due to his play, but it's also a lot to do with just what he represents as part of like what his contract represents as far as the way management looks at roster design and construction more than the person himself. But holy, he was exceptional for what he was being asked to do in that game, and he did a great job. And today as well, like he wasn't. I think he was one of the better players on the ice again, even today. You get a little bit of glimmers of, oh, this is why you're here, kind of thing, right? Every now and that's like, something that
I get it.
You need.
I understand why you have value to these teams and there's GMs and whatever, because you do offer something, even though if what you offer means you look stupid for most of that time. Yeah, that you're considered valuable to them, but
with those rough contracts, it's can you find a way to make it work? And in 2 games, granted it's 2 games, but for 2 games they've made it work. They have made it work for two games, and I think that's worth saying for him as well. And the defense did I think the best they could given the circumstances.
Yeah, 2 wins. I mean, so obviously they did pretty good. Other debuting player, Matthew, like perfect debut. Like you have to wonder.
Perfect day. Yeah.
You really have to wonder if like the coaches or GMs plan this shit where they're like, "Hey, it's 420. You know, it'd be really funny is if we got Matthew Highmore in." And maybe he was the answer they were looking for 420 victories, and it worked. They got Highmore, and
what did you think of him? What did you think of him?
Honestly,
first go?
I thought he looked okay. I thought he looked like he wasn't chasing the puck near. Like, I don't want to compare him to Adam Gaudette, but like obviously my gut instinct is like, okay, they obviously wanted a replacement for whatever Adam Gaudette brought to the organization. They wanted someone else who like facilitated a different skill set. So like, what can he do? And the only thing I could say, like, obviously I didn't really see anything on the offensive side of things, but I did notice that I thought his positioning away from the puck looked a lot better than Gaudette's, and it looked like he wasn't constantly chasing. It felt like whenever he was on the ice, he at least was in the right positions to not be chasing the puck and trying to regain possession. He either had it or he was in a position to defend against it. It wasn't like just like whenever Gaudette was on the ice, like with Roussel or whatever, it always felt like frantic, like skating energy. Like they were just constantly trying to skate after the puck in the offensive zone. They were back checking, but it wasn't even like about position. It was just like trying to get back onto their check so they can regain the puck. It always felt like very like frantic energy, which I'm sure doesn't fly with the type of mold that Travis Green wants in his bottom six. He wants the Brandon Sutters, right? He wants the safe defensive play and guys that are just going to have the puck and not chase it.
Yeah, and when you say that, I think it's not like we're trying to like kick Adam Gaudette out the door or anything. Like
no,
it's
like
more,
Gaudette has a good skill set that just
it was just maybe a bad.
It
just wasn't the right fit for what his skill set is, and I think
exactly.
With Highmore, there were a couple of cases where he. Even though like his offensive ability isn't supposed to be a calling card for what he does, there were a couple points where he looked like he was going for the puck a little bit. I saw some people comparing him a little bit more, his energy a lot more to like a Tyler Mott, sort of, especially because he hasn't been, he's not in the lineup yet.
Which is probably why they sought him out too. They were like, we need more Tyler Motts in our lineup or in our bottom six to be specific.
And that's
that's fine.
That's a reasonable ask, I would say.
Yeah.
I mean, there was the one case where I think he had an odd man rush with Jake Virtanen, and just couldn't get the puck through the Leaf defenseman.
Yeah.
And that would have sprung Jake for a chancing close. But that's more of a new thing. I'm new to the team and I don't know these guys fully yet, and I've only done one practice with them at like one
two or three
at
least. Yeah,
I think he just got out of protocol. So I think for the one game he got, he looked like comfortable, and I think that's all you can ask at this point for him.
He looked safe, and that's pretty much all they needed. So I guess that will just get us into our last topic of the games before we get into some other news from around the league. The big elephant in the room, which is the Toronto Maple Leafs goaltending. Because Jack Campbell was like the miracle run. I think our last episode we were talking about how Jack Campbell was going to be their guy, and this is what they're hoping for. They're hoping for a Cam Ward-esque run from him that's going to take them all the way deep into a playoff run, despite the fact that he doesn't have the experience, yada, yada, yada. They pick up David Rittich just as a safety valve. Here we are, like a week after that episode, and it is not looking good for their plans. If they cannot sort out that goaltending position, they are in deep shit.
Yeah, the Leafs' biggest problem in this Matthews Nylander Marner era for them has been the goaltending. Like the goaltending has been good. They have definitely had nights where their goaltending has stolen them a few wins here and there. But the way that they play, they kind of need that on a 90% of the time. So if your goaltender's not playing vague bubble Demko levels of goaltending every single night, you might be in a bit of trouble. And now, I would say in the Vancouver game specifically, I wouldn't say Jack Campbell was terrible. I wouldn't say he was like awful. I would say that he got outplayed by Braden Holtby, which for the Leafs is kind of the problem. They can't. Exactly. If your goaltending gets outplayed, you're in trouble. You're screwed because they're not like the most structured defensively, and they leave a lot of gaps. And they're very much we're going to outscore you to victories sort of team. And I think the one goal that Campbell really should have had. I mean, the first Horvat goal wasn't great, wasn't phenomenal, but the second one, overtime winner. Horvat takes the shot. It clips him. He can't squeeze the I think this would have been his blocker side arm, his right arm, in time, and it goes through and in. And you have to have that from the distance out that Horvat's shooting. You have to have that puck.
Especially
And
since
that's
it's the same shot that he scored with earlier.
earlier in the game. It's the same mistake of he was square to the player and not the puck, and he left that room to the side. He left too much room on his right side, and that cost him.
Yeah.
And then you fast forward into today's game. David Riddick, they've just picked him up from Calgary. He's played, I think, 2 games before this with the Leafs already. Both, I think, they lost.
Yeah, he played in I think the day they traded for him, he played. I think, and they lost in the shootout or something like that. He came on the
plane with the Flames
Yeah.
to the game,
Awkward.
which honestly was a very nice thing to do. Like, that's honestly a very sweet thing to do, to be like, okay, so you don't have to quarantine with your new team. We're gonna fly you in with our plane, so you don't have to. That's honestly a very sweet thing to do.
Because they could have made him drive, and we're like, no, we're not going to help the Leafs out. You're going to have to drive there, bud.
Very easily. They very easily could have made him drive or taken the commercial flight on his own and had him quarantined for a week. Which would have... So, like, there was no obligation for them to do it, but they were like, no, we'll fly you out. Well, you can come with us, like, right? And that apparently there were some of his teammates were ribbing him. We're like, I think there was something where it was like when the food came out, they're like, hey, you can't have the food. You don't, or something. I think that was something I heard where it was like, hey, Flames only sort of thing, right? Where they're like messing around with him. They're messing around with him. Yes. And the last 2 games, I think he played, he did not, apparently he did all right in the game against the Jets. Was a little more suspect in the game against Calgary. Tonight, oh boy, he was not good. I don't know if you heard the call on Tanner Pearson's game where Sean Garrett is just busting a gut. God. And honestly, Sam, I feel bad. I feel bad for David Riddick. From what I hear, he's just a stand-up guy. Yeah. But he was not good. He had a very, very, very bad night. It was not. He was not very.
He was not very big save Dave at all, frankly. And
the team he was big save Dave.
I mean, realistically speaking, too, like the Leafs shouldn't be asking Dave Riddick to be big save Dave against a team coming off of a near month-long COVID layoff. Like they should not be having competitive games against Braden Holtby off of a month layoff. You know what I mean? Like we've praised Holtby obviously for like his skill and like basically like how well he did play, which was very well. But at the end of the day, his season's been awful. Like under no circumstances should he have given this Leafs team that much trouble realistically.
And I agree with you on that for sure. And I did want to talk about Holtby's game, like Holtby's actual performance itself, like just break down a little bit of how he did. But in terms of Riddick, like with Riddick, in Riddick's case, I think the problem there is that if the Leafs just get like mediocre, just okay goaltending tonight, they probably win. They probably win that game anyway. They got bad goaltending, right in that final period. I mean, there's the Höglander shot where he kind of granted he gave himself the time and space to take a shot. Yeah. But he ends up kind of only not getting all of his power behind that shot, and it still beats Riddick Riddick still can't hang on to it, and it bounces in. So, and I think that's the tying goal. Then on the power play, you have JT Miller taking the shot where Riddick basically just kicks it right out in front to Tanner Pearson. And to be fair to Riddick on that one, Pearson was left wide open in front of the net. Like there was he had created the room and time and space to take as much time as he wanted. But still, it was too juicy a rebound for you to be giving out right to Tanner Pearson standing right on top of you like that. You got to be a little bit more clean about that save. So that cost him. And then that final goal where it's just a short side flips it goes underneath the pad and in, and it was completely suboptimal goaltending. And now if you're Toronto, I mean, you had Freddie Anderson. He is here. From what I heard, from what I saw pictures. He's here. He's been hurt from hurt. Sorry, I shouldn't clarify. He was actually injured, but now it's maybe more of a case of he is good to go, but they're leaving him on IR as long as they possibly can.
Right.
Because I mean, again, if you the idea is that if Campbell and Riddick are playing perfectly well, you don't need to bring Anderson
you're
back
no
in,
rush to bring him back because his season wasn't really going that great anyway. So if you can ride the hot, it's all just like it's just cap maneuvering and riding the hot hand while you still can. Unfortunately, the last 2 games may have indicated that they've got 2 hands holding ice packs.
Yeah, and now they might need to rush him back. They might need to rush Anderson back in for the next game, and I don't know how the waiver thing works now. Do they still have to clear waivers for the taxi squad? They must not.
I guess not.
I think at this point it's because people were already doing like the paper transfers and everything,
right? I think so.
At the trade deadline. So I don't think they necessarily have to put Riddick on waivers to put him on the taxi squad.
Yeah.
But still, now you've run into a situation where you can't give yourself kind of the optimal cap room that you would necessarily were using with Anderson on LTIR.
Yeah.
And I mean, you run into a situation where all of your goaltenders, because I mean, whether or not the Leafs have been good enough, they are going to make the playoffs. That's a guarantee. They're going to be there. But now the whole issue you were supposed to address at the trade deadline, where you were going to get the confident guarantee of, okay, goaltending won't be our problem in the playoffs this time around.
Yeah.
Oh no! You are running. All 3 of your goaltenders might be going in with absolutely just no confidence, which is
not what you want at all.
And you compare that to Braden Holtby's 2 games over the last weekend, where he was playing just out of his mind. And there was a thread that was posted on Twitter that I did want to kind of go run through. This is by Rob Gearson, I think is his last name, at goalie_school.
Mm-hmm.
He did a phenomenal thread breaking down how Holtby played in the first game of the Toronto series, and how basically, this is, so I'm just gonna quote Rob here directly. He's in referring to Holtby, he started the game slow and looked rusty, which was 100% to be expected. Against a high-skilled team like the Leafs, who often make that extra pass instead of shooting, it's even tougher to get into the game. He chased the play early. And meanwhile, a little while later, he missed his post with his skate while going post to post, which is, so basically he's trying to make that play across. He doesn't position himself correctly, and he ends up over sliding into the white ice instead of hitting his post. But as the game got going, there was the whiff on the Nylander goal, which he would have wanted to have back. But one of the biggest things that he mentioned that I definitely immediately clicked into, light bulb goes off in your head as a goaltender. One of the things that is really important for goalies is the bounces and the luck aspect to it. There is something to a goalie's confidence where when a bounce that maybe wouldn't go your way when you're having a hard time, if it goes in the opposite direction and benefits you, suddenly that makes it easier for you to play. And in this case, that was the Spezza shot on the power play, where he has the wide open net and he can't get it through. He whiffs on it and it kind of hits the post and crawls out. And the way Rob clarifies that is, it's like, when you're struggling, it feels like every mistake costs you. He beat the pass on this play, but Galchenyuk one-timed this pass hard backdoor to Spezza. Holtby went down, as it was a really tough read. Spezza had an empty net, but shoveled it into the post. For Holtby now, not every mistake is going in. All you need to do is just keep doing the basics. And similar play, he beats the pass centering out into the play. I guess I can show these without showing the audio. Let me get the screen share for anyone who's watching on our video feed here, where you have the play here where essentially he squares up to that shooter on the left side. He's able to come back for the pass to Thornton and get in front of it before he runs out of time, basically. And that was something that you and I have talked about at length before, where one of Holtby's issues this season is he's slow to react on the pass back or that shot across, and he's just a step behind. And that game went, and in this game, for I would say
this game as well,
the entirety.
Yeah,
he was beating the pass. He was beating the pass. Not only was he beating the pass, he was centering up squarely. He was making the right position. He had his positioning down perfect. Rob makes the mention of quiet feet, and I think Kevin Woodley talked about this in regards to Demko earlier in the season. The quiet feet aspect, where basically your skates are just curving perfectly into the ice. There's no sense of a bobble as you're like getting up into your positioning. It's a very clean, crisp move across. It's all one motion. Mm-hmm. Whereas when a goaltender is having a harder time, they might maybe wobble a little bit, or they question it as they go into it, so it's not the cleanest motion across the net. And Holtby, for the last 2 games, was very clean. He wasn't making a lot of mistakes. There was the one shorthanded goal where he overslid, but that was a breakdown on his defensive part.
On that one, yeah.
Right. I'm not going to fault him on that at all. And this whole game, and he played like a goaltender that has confidence, and that confidence goes such a long way for a goaltender, and how their overall mentality goes. And yeah, he played. When he got the bounces that he needed to win, but that wasn't the only reason why they won. They won because he played out of his mind, and he was absolutely getting in front of shots and making the key saves he had to, and including a couple that just crazy ones, like Galchenyuk, the shot on Galchenyuk right on the back door, which maybe didn't get enough attention. Yeah, it didn't. No, it almost got thrown under the rug after the Simmons Hasek shot, which I loved. But one of the things that Rob also mentions in that particular case is that the commentator said Galchenyuk didn't get the puck up, but his route to the puck made it really hard for Galchenyuk to get it up over his pad from how close and tight he was. And that is positioning. That is a complete textbook save. Because you need to be able to cut the angle down. And I know I'm probably going too far into the goaltending here for some people's liking, Cody included. But I just look at plays like that where he just absolutely he puts the pad up. There's not enough time for Galchenyuk to get in front of it, and you just see that play as he kind of lifts the leg up just enough to get in front of it. And the Simmons shot is going to get the most play, but that's obviously because it's amazing. I loved it. I've done plays like that a couple times, and I always just think of those are the best ones, even though those are just like the complete 1 in a million saves.
But it was rad.
Yes, I will say though, one of the other things he mentions in this thread, again, this thread's amazing. I will post a link to it somewhere. I think I've retweeted it for sure. Is if you watch he mentions if you watch Braden Holtby's face in that play, you can see the moment where he finds the puck in the air and adjusts his body to keep it out of the net. So you can actually see in the slow motion where he sees the individual shot as he recorrects with that right pad as he just kind of bats it out. That's keep in mind, that's a millisecond of time. There's not a lot of time to make that adjustment, and he perfectly got it. And these last 2 games, he played like the goaltender that won a cup with the Capitals in 2018.
He was rolling back the clock a bit with his play in the last 2 games. I know, obviously in the first period of the first game, I think I DM'd you immediately, and I was like, he looks so slow. And
in the early
after that first period, the early going, he shook off the cobwebs. Then all of a sudden, it was like, oh no, he's fine. He's back in the game. He's kind of figured out. He remembered how to play, and he, like you said, he was reacting to passes way better. He was getting through his crease way better. obviously, like we all saw that fucking Galchenyuk stop, which is just absolutely outrageous. Like honestly, it's almost like a better save than the windmill Hasek save, but the Hasek one is just so stylish and flashy that like you can't not praise it. But yeah, other than that, I don't know if you have any more goalie talk you want to get into.
The saves that just a little bit, like the save, like you mentioned, the Hasek save, the Hasek style save is more fun, and those are the ones that always get on like the greatest saves of all time highlight reels and everything, right? Because the desperation, but again, it's a desperation save. The best saves for goalies, when we look at it more or less, is the Galchenyuk shot. I think if you asked Holtby, would be the one that he'd say like that was the one he probably is more proud of as like a goaltender, just because that is a positioning. That's a positioning save. That's I correctly adjusted and played to the puck and to the angle to make that save. And that was a shot that, as it's going across, he already knows he's gonna have. He already knows he's gonna get it. Whereas
if he didn't make that correction too, everyone would be like, "Oh my god, this is so embarrassing." Because if he doesn't kick that leg up, he's basically watching the puck fall down at his crotch and roll right in, and everyone's like, "Oh, what a bad call."
Yeah, but with the Galchenyuk one, it's very much as soon as he sees that pass across, he knows 100% in his mind that he's getting it. Like he doesn't have to think about it. It's very much a react. It's a very much a react stop, and that was something we talked about in the early parts of the season, where it very much looked like he was making a lot more guesses, where he was guessing on a lot more opportunities. And it's very much about read and react at the NHL level because of how quickly the play moves. I mean, it's about that at every level, but at the NHL especially, you have even less time to make that decision. So any time you make second guessing your decision, your read, is time lost. And then of course the last thing is, one of the reasons they even get into OT in that game is because he very perfectly hit the puck from the camera on the Marner shot, the wraparound. I saw some Leafs people were, of course, as always, livid about everything. And they were like, "Look, you can see the puck." First of all, no, you can't. You definitely can't see the puck. And
definitely don't that's such don't even try.
I love those. I absolutely love those. And then he like shuffles out of the net. It's like, Like I saw some people being like, "Oh, that means it's in." Hey, technically you don't. For all we know, it was completely in front of the line. And I saw some people being like, "Oh, well, then that should count as a goal, or there should be a penalty. That should be a penalty for doing that, or something, right?" It's like, well, but you can't prove that you literally cannot prove that's in. For all you know, this is true. For all you know, it was still in the blue paint. For all you know, in this particular case, it probably was in. But like in other certain in other certain cases, it's not always that kind of clear cut. In terms of a common sense standpoint, it could be very well in the blue paint still, or not even over the line. It's just because the goaltender in some of those cases doesn't even know where it is. They're just making the safe play of scooching out of the net before, so it doesn't roll in and look like it was in the net.
Yeah, it was a veteran move.
Very veteran move.
Basically doing all of the things, like trying to scooch it out, pinning it from both sides with his blocker and his other hand. Just all in all, a great 2-game performance from Thatcher Demko. From Braden Holtby.
I will admit I have done that on occasion. I have definitely gotten a few goals called back because I was able to just scooch out of the net well enough in time, and also the body language is important when they're screaming at the ref that it was in. You just know you just look at them like you're out of your mind. It was not even close. Yeah. Like, get out of here. Don't lie. Or I'll be like, don't lie to the ref like that. And of course I'm the one maybe being a little dishonest on that one.
As you're shuffling forward.
If you're not cheating, you're not trying.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm kidding. Kids, don't listen to that. That's bad advice. Don't listen to me.
Cheaters always win.
Cheaters never prosper. It's not
cheaters
except in
prosper.
Sports. Except in sports, unfortunately.
Especially in sports.
Sometimes.
Cheating is good and cheating is cool.
Cheating is well, you know what? Let's get off of it.
We'll get into some
okay.
other stuff. So, number one, obviously, some guy I don't think I've ever watched him play, but Pat Marleau or something
I believe
broke
it's pronounced
the
Patrick Marleau.
maybe I don't know. I've never seen him play. Broke the all-time games played record. I mean, that can't be right because I've never heard of him. But I don't know. That's pretty neat. I saw. So yeah, I'm joking. I obviously know who he is. My favorite thing to come out of this was Steve Simmons basically being like, the record like is meaningless because he has no Hart Trophy and he has no cups, like basically just a bunch of Homer's crap, right? And then
which is ridiculous considering he was a Leaf. He was a goddamn Leaf.
And then Nathan CSN pulling up an old tweet from Simmons that's like
this you?
Like, I'm so honored to have watched him break like someone's record, like Andrew Truck's games played record or something. And he's like, weird. You seem to care a lot more when he was a Leaf. Now you're trying to shit on him. Weird how that works.
So you know what though? I will say Steve Simmons did not have. Steve Simmons' take was terrible. It was somehow not the worst one, which was this other woman. There was this other woman who straight up said that Patrick Marleau, out of respect for Gordie Howe, should have retired and not tied the record and not taken his record, which is the galaxy brain gymnastics to be like, this guy who can still play hockey should have retired earlier than he wants to because because the audacity of him passing Mr. Hockey. Like, Gordie Howe's record is fantastic, but it's like the old saying goes, records are meant to stay the same way forever and ever and ever and amen. Yeah. That's how it is, right?
People are not allowed to break records unless they're like the greatest of all time. Otherwise, you're not allowed to. Which is like, who cares? What the fuck? What a stupid
like,
thing
imagine if if that was how it worked, literally we wouldn't ever have, like, the Olympics would never happen. Like, every sporting event ever, like, after the first one would be like, all right, records have been set, everyone go home. Yeah. Like, that's ridiculous. Like, are we gonna what sucks is this is just a precursor for when we have to have this conversation when Alex Ovechkin breaks Gretzky's goals record, which you talked about before. If he does that, oh my god, especially because he's a Russian guy, he's Russian, breaking the Canadian Great One record. People are going to be like just filling diapers. It will be obnoxious. It'll be very obnoxious if he breaks that record. People are going to get so huffy about that. When they should just be applauding a guy for doing as well as he has for as long as he have. But in Marleau's case, Marleau is a guy who I don't want to say he's flown under the radar per se, but that kind of is appropriate. Like, he's never been like the flashiest player. He's a lot more like if I were to put a Canucks comparable in here, he's more like a Trevor Linden than like a Pavel Bure, sort of thing, right? Where he was never like scoring the highlight reel goals or making the craziest plays, but he was clutch when he had to be, and he was always contributing. And he was a huge part.
Yeah, he never ran like the individual awards or whatever, so it's like obviously he never stood out, right? He's just like the glue that lasted a very, very, very long time.
Right. He played for years on a team that had Joe Thornton. So he was always prime Joe Thornton. So he was always kind of number two. Yeah. When the Sharks were at their peak. And for him to get to 1,768 NHL games and pass Gordie Howe is phenomenal. Like, it's an incredible feat. I was really lucky to get to see Marleau play on a regular occasion when I was living in the Bay Area. And I mentioned this on Twitter, just see like the games that Marleau and Thornton in their prime, Evgeny Nabokov, Dan Boyle, Danny Heatley, that Sharks team of like the late 2000s, early 2010s, when they were playing the Canucks of that era with Luongo and the Sedins and Kessler and Bieksa. That was some of the best hockey I've ever seen. Like, their battles were they maybe not as like legendary as say like to some people as like say like Chicago the games against Chicago or like Boston. But the Sharks
but
games,
they were like
those
perennially number 2 basically, which is like always made for really good playoff hockey and regular season hockey too for the most part. So
yeah, it was always a good when the Canucks were able to start beating the Sharks on a regular occasion, that was that was a measuring stick. Like that was a real. There was a real. I don't know if this was the same for everybody else, but for me, because I remember being for a while only being able to get the Canucks Sharks games on TV for a while, so I wouldn't see the Canucks on television that often. When they started, when the season series started going from like say like 3-1 Sharks or like 2-1 Sharks to flipping around and turning in the Canucks' favor, and they'd start winning that extra game.
Yeah,
that was when it became really clear that this is a good hockey team. The Canucks are a good team now. Like this is a juggernaut team, and Marleau is part of the reason they were that important of a real like balancing measuring stick for the Canucks. The Canucks had to be able to beat them to prove that they were good enough to be considered in like the top teams of the league.
Yeah.
And Marleau did a lot for that organization. I can't, seeing it up front, I know I'm ranting again. But
welcome to the Lachlan Irvine show, basically.
Hey, you know what? You go on a lot of rants on this show. Like, I get my time today.
I haven't even spoken once this episode.
Please, but you get 90% of the time on all the other shows. Yeah, we're podcast drama. That Sharks organization in that fan base is the way that it is, and like is as large and as like big a following as it is because of guys like Patrick Marleau. They rebuilt that team, went from being not so much a footnote as just like a kind of under the radar team as like now just a premier organization in the league. Playoff failures aside. Mm-hmm. They've been a model as far as the regular season goes. They've been a model organization for an insane amount of time, and Patrick Marleau is a massive part of that. And for him to go and break a record that many people again thought was going to be unbreakable, and to do it with all the games that he's lost because of the 2004 lockout, you throw that in there, the 2013 lockout. The pandemic, like he probably would have set this record a couple years ago under normal circumstances. If those games had been played as is,
he would have done it last year.
He would have. He had 40 games. He would have done it last year.
48 from the lockout year in 2013. He would have done it last year.
If you add the 82 that he missed in 04, that's another one. That's there. And I mean, he's on an Ironman streak. I think of like 900 at this point, as well. Just a boot. Right? And yeah, he's done wonders. I will say there was one funny thing that did come out of all this, and that was, I don't know if you've seen this picture. Have you seen these?
I did, yeah.
The Patrick Marleau gloves.
The gloves, the custom embroidered gloves that say most games played in NHL history, yeah.
Yeah, but have you seen the problems with them? The errors? There are 2 errors on here. Can you find them? I would suggest here. You know what you should do? You should read them out loud. Read the gloves out loud.
Most games played in NHL history, 1768th NHL game.
Yeah, if you're not watching the video, Cody just made the confused face. The confused face when he realized that. Yeah, it says the 1768th NHL games on there, which is not good grammar. Makes it sound like an Olympic, like the Olympics. The 168th NHL games in Innsbruck.
It's like they were trying to tie in the 1768 to the previous sentence, but then decided to just make it the stat and forgot to change that.
Yeah, and forgot to take the TH out. And then the other one, I won't make you look for this one. They used the wrong Toronto Maple Leafs logo as well. Which is quite funny because he did not wear that. He never wore that logo. Only the Jersey people are gonna really get a kick out of that one. Yeah. Hey, What still exciting. You get those cool gold gloves that have airs on them. You still are the only one who's earned those ever.
Exactly.
So, hey,
You'll
congrats, Patrick.
probably be the only one. So yeah, congrats to him.
Yeah.
The only other news that we wanted to talk on was apparently this kind of broke the day before or the day of the Canucks' first game back. The Binghamton
Binghamton
Devils
There we
are
go.
apparently in a spat with the New Jersey Devils over, I guess, the fact that Binghamton is allowed to host fans in their buildings, and they've basically said to the New Jersey Devils, like, why don't you come bring the team back, bring the farm team back here, and we can play here. And New Jersey's like, no, we're good. we're gonna keep them here in Newark, and they're gonna practice out of our team facility here
Is that
and
what they said?
play
Is
games.
that what is?
That's
that
what I'd
what
read.
the-
Is like
Okay.
they had all the right ability in the world to play out of Binghamton, and instead of returning to finish out their AHL season, the New Jersey Devils were like, no, we're going to keep them close and playing games out of our practice facility. And I guess this is just like a long list of grievances that New Jersey has with the city of Binghamton over their team and its location and all that stuff. So
And like they released a statement today.
they made it official.
Well-
They're like, yeah, we're our partnership with New Jersey Devils is done. We apologize to our season ticket holders that had reserved their spots for next year. And this is interesting or newsworthy for Utica Comets fans, Canucks fans, because the franchise owner of the Utica Comets reserved the trademark for the Utica
Robert
Devils,
Ashe.
a website and all, and the team name. So like, obviously they might not move the team to a different location, but obviously the thought process is there that they might, and so Eshe is positioning himself to be prepared in the event that they do, and Utica takes on New Jersey's farm team. It's kind of out of nowhere because I think the Canucks signed like a 5-year deal with an out clause after 2, and it's kind of like, okay, well, why'd you sign a 5-year deal if you knew you'd be immediately checking out within the second year?
Well, so that's the thing, right? Like, I don't know if the Canucks were necessarily like people were like I know on Hockey Night in Canada on Saturday, it was kind of being spun like this was the Canucks' decision to leave Utica, and then
Right. But then the other news
and
came
then
out.
the Devils took the thing. But I think it was more the other way around, where the Devils were having this infight with Binghamton.
Yes.
They go over to the Utica people and were like, "Yo, you want a team closer by?" And they were kind of like, and then they started doing we're gonna opt, or at least doing it as like a sort of like show of strength thing to maybe get a better deal with Binghamton.
Right. It definitely seems like Robert Eshe positioning himself just in case. Like, I'm sure, because obviously the information is going to come out, like that Binghamton press release where they basically say, yeah, our affiliation's done. We have no idea what's in store for our ownership group or our status with the AHL. The Canucks would see that and be like, oh, well, maybe this is an excuse for us to get out and move our farm team to the West Coast. We're going to have Seattle coming in, so this just makes sense to break here. And Eshe is probably being like, well, if New Jersey Devils don't want their farm team in Binghamton anymore, like, I'm going to make myself available and I'm going to reserve the namesake of the team because they were the Utica Devils at one point. It didn't work well for them then. But hey, he's a businessman. He's got to be able to franchise his team out to other NHL teams in the off chance that, Vancouver decides they're going to go in other directions, which is devastating because the Utica Comets logo is like one of the fucking best in North American hockey. It is so clean. The Utica Devils jersey or logos, like, it's okay. It's kind of boring, but like it's nothing to write home about. Big loss for hockey.
I wanted to ask you if you've heard anything, because in terms of like, not you obviously don't have to give specifics, but like, have you heard anything in terms of like where the Canucks might be considering taking the Comets? Because they are.
I just know from Rick Dollywell's reporting that they were looking at places like around California, like in Arizona as well. So they were looking at Salt Lake City. I think Prescott Valley in California as well. I guess they
Prescott
have
Valley.
an arena there or something. But
I
it's
would have
basically
to.
all like it's kind of like south of like Nevada and to the west of like the California teams like based out of like Ontario and stuff like that, so that they would have kind of like a hub of teams there.
Okay, Prescott would be
And
in. Okay. Yeah.
so I don't know.
I.
It makes sense they would be on the West Coast. It's always
Yeah.
made sense to me they'd be on the West Coast because of the travel. I know they were big proponents of how much more extra practice time they got in Utica, but I mean, look at what's gone on with the call-ups just this year alone, where guys have to quarantine for 7 days from. I mean, obviously COVID situation, but travel isn't great.
Yeah.
It's a 2-flight thing. You have to drive like 3 hours after arriving in Syracuse. Like it's not easy
No.
for their
No.
team. It's not it's not an easy bus schedule either. The coach was literally saying so in the pregame of their Providence game or their Syracuse game. He was like, "Oh yeah, the Providence game was tough for Ethan Keppen because he basically got out of his quarantine and then basically met us at the rink and then had to bus for 4 hours to Providence for a game." So it's like,
Yeah.
it's not easy. So it makes
They're
sense
the-
if you can get him in California and maybe a team wants to have the same kind of arrangement where they pay the team a franchising fee to run the operations so the Aquilinis don't have to spend money, then
Well,
maybe
the Canucks own the Comets franchise. They do own the team. I think they just have
they
a
own
team.
they own the players and the
I
the
think they own the
franchise,
team. Yeah, the franchise. Yeah,
but Robert Esche is like he like he
I think he's
leases
like the middle.
he leases the building and he handles all the support staff, coach and the coaching, I think.
I don't. I maybe.
Like
I think,
not like Trent Call, but like the strength and conditioning staff, the equipment managers,
Okay.
like that kind of shit. Like they're in
Yeah.
charge of like the actual like the rink operations side of things, and the Canucks should basically supply the bodies.
Because I think I think wherever the farm team goes, I think the Comets' history and records will go with them. Like they won't stay in Utica, from my understanding.
Technically they would transfer over to the next iteration
yeah,
or whatever.
Right, they'd still be the same. The next version of the Canucks farm team would still be the old Utica Comets. Would be the and I know I mentioned this briefly on the last episode, but since you're here, and it's worth reiterating. I know a lot of people have been talking about how they think it's going to be like the Coliseum, how like they're going to come to the Coliseum and everything, and that's their expectation of where this team goes. I would say temper that, because because that wouldn't be the most ideal situation. It would be much more ideal to have them at the Coliseum. The problem is there aren't any teams close enough by for that to work from a travel logistics standpoint.
It would only work if the AHL moved to the current iteration where there's a California division and Canadian division, and then
where
some
Calgary
kind of hybrid thing.
Calgary moves Stockton up to the Stockton Heat up to Calgary or Alberta, and that sort of thing. But right now, that doesn't sound like I don't think that's going to happen, because I think they really like the Pacific Division as it is. And the Canucks really missed the boat on that when they first rejigged everything and realigned everything. They were like a year early for it when they started the Comets, and they seemed fine with it. But it's become very clear that it's silly to have the longest. The Canucks already have travel problems as it is, being so far away from everybody else.
Yeah,
the longest travel,
and this doesn't help in the slightest.
Having
it's
your
never
team
made sense, really.
Yeah. It's never made sense, other than the fact that the team was successful in Utica, as far as like a business standpoint.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
I would say that the most likely options here, I know Patrick Johnston of the Province mentioned the AHL really likes Sacramento as a city, as an option. Like the league likes Sacramento. I will say that one, like, well, Sacramento is a nice place and would be a good spot for a team. The problem is I would say right now they don't have a good enough practice facility. I've been to the one practice rink in the area, which is Skate Town in Roseville. It's okay, but it's not up to pro hockey standard. Like, you couldn't put them in there. It's only got one sheet of ice, I think, or maybe two. for hockey.
Yeah,
it's
that's not
good
going to work
enough.
for a pro hockey team.
No, and it's a drive. It's a good drive away from downtown Sacramento, which is where they'd be playing most likely, because they'd be playing probably where the Sacramento Kings venue, their new building out there.
Right.
Which obviously if the Kings need put the court out, you need to have an extra somewhere else to practice. Yeah. I firmly believe that their best option is Oakland. California, and I'm not just being biased because when living in California, it would have been really great if the Canucks farm team was an hour down the road from me. But they have the empty arena, they have the Oracle there, which is probably too big for the AHL as in its current form. But they're looking to redo that area anyway still keep it as a venue and maybe downsize it a little bit. So that would be perfect. Or there's also kind of the option where they could take what would be their practice facility, which is the Oakland Ice Center downtown, which is owned and operated by the Sharks, and they could basically pay them for some renos to put some extra seats in, the way that a lot of teams are doing it now, where I think the Laval Rocket basically play in what is technically an amphitheater almost, or it's a hybrid mix of a practice facility and a rink, and the Barracuda are doing the same thing in San Jose, where they're building a very small 5,000 seat arena basically,
right,
connected directly next to the Sharks practice facility of which already has 5 sheets of ice.
Yeah.
So that's something that I think they should look into. I think Oakland would be perfect, not just for that, but also for the bringing back the Oakland Seals branding, because they used to they had the same colors and everything. They had the exact same colors for a while. That wouldn't be
bad.
That would not be bad. All right. That's all I wanted to say on that.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, could you imagine though going from Comets to Seals? It would be so cool to have the Oakland Seals branding back, but to lose the Comets for the Seals.
I mean, the Oakland Comets sounds pretty good too. I could see that working as well. The Oakland Comets, it works well, and they wouldn't, and they don't have any other teams that would be playing during that time frame most likely. So people in Oakland would get behind it, because people in Oakland especially are very weird about going to cheer for the San Francisco teams ever. And you should have seen how betrayed people were when the Warriors when the Warriors moved across to the Bay to San Francisco a couple years ago. People were mad. People were very, very mad, and were you left Oakland, you traitors, sort of thing. They still they still support the team, but they were very mad about that, because there is kind of the little brother complex there. And so Oaklanders really want their own teams separate from San Francisco.
Right.
So the only team that's there from during the year now, because the Raiders left for Vegas as well, is the Athletics, and they would only overlap from about
September,
early March. Early March, and if they made the playoffs October, September, right? So, that's a long time. That's a lot of time where they would theoretically be the only professional draw in that area, in the Oakland area. People might get behind that team.
You know how they would actually even capitalize the market too? Because I just said it. Just name the team the Oakland Raiders, AHL club.
I don't think you could do that. Or make it Oakland Ray, RAY hyphen Durs.
And it's it's a manta ray with with shades on.
Yeah, the Raiders.
Holding a hockey stick.
Yeah, there you go.
Here's tails a hockey stick. Speaking of people being upset about their teams moving, we'll quickly talk on this before we close out for the night. A league that lasted about as long as this segment's going to last, the European Football Super League. A bunch of rich billionaires were mad that their investments in European soccer clubs weren't going anywhere, so people like Stan Kroenke and John Henry came together and said, let's make this like North American hockey and split away from the UEFA system or the English soccer system and move to a a Big Ten, like a Pac-10 conference where all the best teams from the major leagues come together and play each other 15, 20 times a year so we can make as much money as possible playing the Stars instead of hoping that, they make it to the Champions League quarterfinals, like just cutting out the middleman and getting right to it. Yeah. And people, rightly so, were fucking pissed. So
they it was ridiculous. It was crazy how much people, I expected it because European soccer fans are a whole other level of crazy. Yes, and I mean that in the nicest way possible.
In the polite way.
In the politest way possible. They are crazy. And yeah, literally this morning, between the time where I put this on our document, to tonight, the entire league folded. The entire league disappeared. Because literally one team dropped out, then another team, and then Manchester United dropped out, and it's like, oh, it's dead now. As soon as they dropped out, they fired the president.
And they fired the manager, the owner, whatever, president that didn't come up with the idea, but was part of the idea that that generated itself. So it's like, everyone obviously saw the blood in the water and was like, fuck this, we're getting out before we do any more irreparable brand damage. I'm sure the fans are still going to be pissed off no matter what, because this was an ugly, blatant attempt at trying to make money. Yeah. Oof. Big old oof.
I saw it. It's really, it is kind of interesting, as a, just kind of like a brain exercise at how different the way North American sports work compared to European soccer, European football. Yeah. It's such a different animal, where, I think I saw somebody discuss it where it was it's not I think this was on 650 this morning, where they were talking about how North American owners look at sports as a business, whereas European ones look at it as just the sport itself, and it's just about community kind of civic pride sort of thing.
Sure.
Kind of almost like the way that Americans look at college sports to a certain extent, almost.
Right.
Where it's more about the community aspect of it. So for all the rich teams, which very specifically a few of them are owned by American owners now, like Stan Kroenke, if you don't know. He's the guy that moved the Rams from St. Louis to LA when the city of St. Louis wouldn't give him $1 billion stadium for free, basically.
Cool guy.
Very cool guy. He also, and this is there's an NHL connection here because he also owns the Colorado Avalanche. So that's where, technically he doesn't, his son does, but come on. It's all under the same, it's all under the same sports brand and everything. They own all the Denver teams that play in that building. I think the Nuggets and the Mammoth and the arena as well. And then there's John Henry, who owns the Red Sox, I believe. I think they own I think it's Fenway Sports owns what is it? Not Liverpool is the one they own. Basically, that works in North America. That business aspect, that certain aspect works in North America, I think, for specific reasons, specifically based on density of geography and everything to a level. I don't think I saw some people being relegation promotion should be how the NHL works and everything. I think Igor Larionov II, who is a great Twitter follow, was making that case. And I was like, the problem is there's not enough cities in the US and Canada to make that work. It would just end up like the AHL, where teams are just relocating every 20 minutes.
Travel is obviously the biggest proponent to why relegation works in European soccer leagues, because you don't have to work. You can take a bus and play a team a city over, and they've got a full arena ready. Whereas you can't relegate, Utica to the ECHL because half the teams are in Florida, right? It's a big ask.
And even more importantly, it's even if you could go 2 hours out of central London and still be kind of in London, because it's still that many people living in that area. London proper, I think, has 6 Premier League teams? They have 6 or 7 on their own.
Yeah, just in the city they have 6 alone. It's
but they're all it'd be like if New York basically had the room was big. It'd basically be like New York having like 6 or 7 teams like in the NHL by themselves.
Yeah.
But of course they couldn't do that because they don't have the population even for that in New York.
No.
To do that properly. Teams would be full. Literally, it would be like teams would be relocating all the time because there's just not enough like sustainability to do that. And for that same reason, the way that North American sports wouldn't work in Europe, because it's just there are too many areas where they'd be like, hey, why the hell are you keeping us out of this? Like we have just as much room in business to make this work. Why can't we be in your Super League? So it's good that it floundered. It was I would have hated the precedent that would have set. Like, imagine if it worked. Imagine if the Super League worked. I could very well see like a decade down the road, the original 6 NHL teams being like, all right, Super Hockey League time for us. For like them, the Canucks, the Flyers, the Kings, and like, I don't know, the Knights maybe, and like the Lightning. And that'd be
I don't even think the NHL could do that. But like, in my mind, I'd picture like, what if like the top 2 teams from like the WHL and then the OHL came together with like the top 5 teams from like the US like development program for the like their USHL system or whatever. If they all came together and were like, we're forming a super league and it's gonna be based out of like Detroit and Toronto, like people would be fucking furious. You know what I mean? Yeah. So anyway, didn't happen, so we don't have to worry about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, get out of here. Get out of here
with your greed. But anyways, folks, thank you for tuning into this episode of the CreaseCast. First one in a while. I won't be on this upcoming Friday episode. More Utica Comets games in the store for me, unfortunately. More grinding on stats tracking. But hopefully I'll be back in time to catch the next at least 2 of 4 games against the Ottawa Senators, which will be very interesting now that the Canucks have won 2 against the Toronto Maple Leafs. My good friend here, Lachlan Irvine, where can the fine friends find you if they're not following us on our YouTube channel?
You can follow us. You can subscribe to us on YouTube. You can find us on all of your local podcast platforms. Please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. It really helps us out. Make sure to also follow us on our social media. We have the CreaseCast on Twitter and Instagram, and our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/CreaseCast. And you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and also TikTok sometimes at Lach and the Crease. Search at Lach at the Crease, and you can find my work over at lachandthecrease.com, where I post the North Division Power Rankings every Sunday. Or this week it was Monday, but that was just because I had a lot on my plate this weekend. I got a little bit behind my schedule, but it is there. You can go check it out. This week I wrote about the Canucks return and just how big a deal that first game back was. And you can go find that there. Cody, where can they find you?
The fine fans cannot find me on TikTok because I do not have TikTok, but you can find me at Twitter on
not yet anyway. Yeah, we're working on it.
Don't count on it, bud. But find me on Twitter at Cody Sievertson, Instagram at Comets Harvest. I try to update it, but I forget most of the time. And my work at cometsharvest.com. Thanks again for tuning in, folks. We will catch you in the next couple of days when we review the Ottawa Senators 4-0 sweep against the Vancouver Canucks when they get blown out 55-3. No, I'm just kidding. That's not going to happen.
We're going it's yachts time, baby. Let's go.
Let's go, baby. Thanks for tuning in, guys. We'll catch you guys later. Bye.
Bye.